Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? We are back for another Bible story reading, and I'm sorry it's so late in the day. I've just been super busy, and I've had this silly twitch in my eye. You ever get that, where your eye just kind of twitches like a little muscle spasm? And it's been going on for the last couple days, so I haven't felt much like reading, but I decided I wasn't going to let the devil stop me from doing that, and we are back for another reading. Let me get this adjusted for you a little bit. So here we are. We are going to start on a pretty popular story. This is the story of Esther. It comes straight out of the book of Esther in the Bible. So for those of you joining one of these videos for the first time, let me tell you what we have going on here. We go through the different stories of the Bible for people who have either never read the stories for themselves, maybe have only heard bits and pieces, don't understand them, whatever. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to know what the stories say for yourself. So if they come up in conversation or you hear bits of them, you know exactly what they are about and you can speak about them intelligently. We go live on Facebook. I want to mention that. We go live on Facebook and then we upload those videos later to YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Feel free to check us out on Facebook if you want some live videos and if you want to see some of the other teachings that we post on there sometimes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We are going to go through chapter 1 of the book of Esther. Now, this comes right after the book of Nehemiah. And if you've been following along, you know that we read the whole story of Nehemiah and all of his walls and the wall that he rebuilt and all of the gates that went along with that and what happened with him. But now we're going to start with the story of Esther. So let's start. These events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, who ruled 127 provinces from India to Cush. In those days, King Ahasuerus reigned from his royal throne in the fortress of Susa. He held a feast in the 3rd year of his reign for all his officials and staff, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles and the officials from the provinces. He displayed the glorious wealth of his kingdom and the magnificent splendor of his greatness for a total of 180 days. At the end of this time, the king held a week-long banquet in the garden courtyard for the royal palace for all the people from the greatest to the least who were present in the fortress of Susa. White and violet linen hangings were fastened with fine white and purple linen cords to silver rods and marble columns. Gold and silver couches were arranged on a mosaic pavement of red feldspar, marble mother of pearl, and precious stones. Drinks were served in an array of gold goblets, each with a different design. Royal wine flowed freely according to the king's bounty. The drinking was according to royal decree. There are no restrictions. The king had ordered every wine steward in his household to serve whatever each person wanted. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women of King Ahasuerus' palace. On the 7th day, when the king was feeling good from the wine, Ahasuerus commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abgatha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who personally served him, to bring Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command that was delivered by his eunuchs. The king became furious, and his anger burned within him. The king consulted the wise men who understood the times, for it was his normal procedure to confer with experts in law and justice. The most trusted ones were Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan. They were the 7 officials of Persia and Media who had personal access to the king and occupied the highest positions in the kingdom. The king asked, according to the law, what should be done with Queen Vashti since she refused to obey King Ahasuerus' command that was delivered by the eunuchs? Memucan said in the presence of the king and his officials, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but all the officials and the people who are in every one of King Ahasuerus, I'm going to keep pronouncing his name incorrectly, provinces. For the queen's action will become public knowledge to all the women and cause them to despise their husbands and say, King Ahasuerus ordered Queen Vashti brought before him, but she did not come. Before this day is over, the noble women of Persia and Media who hear about the queen's act will say the same thing to all the king's officials, resulting in more contempt and fury. If it meets the king's approval, he should personally issue a royal decree. Let it be recorded in the laws of Persia and Media so that it cannot be revoked. Vashti is not to enter King Ahasuerus' presence, and her royal position is to be given to another woman who is more worthy than she. The decree the king issues will be heard throughout his vast kingdom, so all women will honor their husbands from the greatest to the least. The king and his counselors approved the proposal, and he followed Memucan's advice. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in its own script, and to each ethnic group in its own language, that every man should be master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. That is the end of chapter 1. Wow, what an interesting story. Remember, there are 3 ways that we look at these stories when we go through them. 1, what does it say? We have to have reading comprehension. 2, what was it saying to the people of the times? What was the culture? We have to take everything into context. And 3, what, if anything, is it saying to us today? Let's unpack this story. So here's what's going on. This king he's a great king. He's king over all of these provinces, 127 provinces, it says, all the way from India to Kush. So he had a lot of wealth. He had a lot of prestige. He had a lot of power. And he throws this 180-day long festival, if you will, to display his worth. He's inviting people to just enjoy the kingdom. Towards the end of that, he sets up this week-long banquet, this opulent, expensive banquet where he invites all of the nobles from around and all of the important people, if you will. And he has wine flowing. In fact, it says that he didn't turn anybody away. If they wanted a drink, they got a drink. And there was food. It describes these curtains, this cloth that was laying around, these rods, the marble, the furniture, the gold. Everything was completely opulent. If you think about going to the most expensive place you have ever been and seeing the most opulent display of wealth you have ever seen, that's what was happening here at this week-long banquet. Meanwhile, Queen Vashti, his queen, his wife, was also hosting a banquet for some women, the royal women. And at some point, the king gets this idea. He tells his eunuchs, go get me my queen and bring her here. I want everybody to see what a beautiful queen I have. But she refused to show up. She would not attend the king's party that he had going on. So he's very insulted, and he consults his wise men. And Memucan says, what should I do about this? This is terrible. And Memucan tells him, if you don't do something about this, then all the other women in the land and all of this region are going to think they don't have to listen to their husbands. Now, you have to remember something about the culture back then. It's not like today. Women didn't have the same elements of freedom that we have as women today in our society. This was a societal thing. we would say women were property, more or less. When we hear that, we think some really horrible connotations to that women were property. But men knew to treat their property well. So if you have a brand new car, that is your property, you're not going to treat it badly if you want that car to run well for you and to be of a benefit to you, correct? Well, that's how men and women's relationships were then. It's not to say that women did not have some things that they could be responsible for, that they could have achievements and have things that they felt good about. It's just that they were dependent upon their husbands mostly for property and income and things like that. When their husbands treated them well, they made their husbands look good. In any event, Mamukin says, look, these women are going to get this idea that they don't have to listen to their husbands, and what benefit will they be basically to their husbands? So you need to send a decree out. Let everybody know that she has now lost her position as queen. Now that's a really big deal because as queen, she had access to all of this wealth. She had access to her home, to everything, and now she's been dethroned and shamed. So this is what happened. So he has sent out this notification to everybody in all of the land that she has been dethroned, and now the king is going to look for a new queen. And as we start to get into chapter 2, you will start to see how he goes about looking for a new queen. And I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler for you. Because we are in the book of Esther, we know that Esther will become the new queen. But how that happens and what happens when she is queen is quite interesting. So that is the first chapter of Esther. I hope you learned something. I look forward to us being together next time, and we'll continue the story of Esther. Have a great night. God bless.